Hey guys, it's KJ from the Scariest Movie Ever channel on YouTube. And have you ever felt like you're living in the upside down? We're living in the as above, so below paradigm. This world is ruled by occultists. There are multiple secret societies that comprise this Illuminati beast system. And part of the spell that humanity is under is the as above, so below paradigm. Everything's been flipped over on its head. These can be very confusing times, but it's also kind of fascinating to watch this stuff play out. We're literally watching the veil being lifted. I see examples of this all the time, and I want to share some of that with you today. So I'm not sure if you've heard of these sightings. There have been two sightings over the last few weeks, one in New York and the other one in Utah, where the sky lit up this really eerie, scary kind of a red, and nobody seems to be able to explain it. So here's a little bit of the footage, the original footage of people driving towards New York, and this is what they saw. Now here's some footage from Utah, and there it is right there. So as you can see, it's some pretty wild footage, and again, nobody really knows where it comes from. I don't really have any idea, but it's just the fact that it exists and what it evoked in my mind when I first saw it. So if you're one of the few people who haven't seen this series yet, it's called Stranger Things, and this is an image from Stranger Things 2. So this is a subtle similarity. I'm going to show you some more here in a moment, but once again, this is how things have been playing out over the last few years. We keep finding reality mirroring art, or art mirroring reality. But all of this is on a whole new level. Some of this is predictive programming, some of it is social engineering. I'll show you some examples of this. Sometimes I wonder if some of it's not spiritually infused. So here are some images from a movie that came out a few years ago called Lars and the Real Girl. And as you can see, the real girl is a doll. And this movie was heavily promoted and won tons of awards, and I believe they're doing that because this is social engineering. They're trying to engineer humanity for this. They want us to accept this more readily once it comes. And it didn't take very long to come, did it? And of course, we see this agenda playing out more and more over the last few years. Here's an image from Westworld. It's a new TV series all about cybernetic humanoids, synthetic humanoids. A big part of this television show also focuses on a brothel and sex robots. So now back to reality. We shouldn't be surprised, in my opinion, when we start seeing stories like this. There's actually a sex robot brothel that opened up in Barcelona. And you can just type into any search engine sex robots, and you're going to come up with tons and tons of choices and multiple stories on this subject. So here's another movie that came out several years ago. Once again, won awards. It was heavily promoted. And this was called Her. And this film was all about a man falling in love with artificial intelligence. So once again, we shouldn't be surprised when we start seeing this playing out in our reality. Again, this is social engineering. It's predictive programming. You can even see it here. This is one of the many stories I found about people falling in love with Siri. Here's a story from this year of July 2017, once again, falling in love with Siri. So I could go on and on with these examples, and I've shown a lot of this in other videos of mine, but here's another one, Altered Carbon, first teaser trailer for a stunning new Netflix sci-fi series. And the series is taken from a novel, and in the series, it's all about people taking their consciousness and uploading it to chips. So once again, this is the intermingling of humanity with technology. And of course, this story is playing out in our reality as well. And once again, you can find multiple examples of this story playing out in our reality, but here's another one, how we will soon be able to upload our minds to computers. This is what the beast system ultimately wants for humanity, to take away our humanity and to connect us with machines. So, of course, we'll see more of this in, quote, entertainment programming. So we understand these basic concepts. You can see how everything is being mirrored. Once again, it's the as above, so below paradigm. But I want to focus more on how the children are being treated in this new system. It's an outright attack on the children, on the youth, an outright attack on innocence and purity. So I'm not sure if you've seen this interview. If you haven't, it's highly recommended. Dutch financial whistleblower admits he was forced to sacrifice children at elite parties. And we know that these groups exist. And we know that at the heart of a lot of these groups that are doing this to children, we'll find Satanists, or more specifically, Luciferians. Once again, it is Luciferians that literally run this world. And they know about the power in the blood, specifically the blood of children, the blood of innocence. And you can find multiple examples of this all around the world. Here's a really fascinating article here. Indian cult kills children for goddess. A painted image of the Hindu goddess Kali is propped up against a stone in the dirt, her long red tongue goading terrified worshippers into submission. From one of her 8 flailing arms, a severed head dangles. Her neck is adorned by a necklace of bleached human skulls. There are bloodstains on the cracked wall behind the terrible postcard-sized image and around the room, splattered gore on the heavy wooden furniture. These dark marks bear witness to a child sacrificed in the name of the abominable goddess. So keeping that story in mind, it adds a whole new element to this story that just came up a few years ago. Goddess Kali showcased on the Empire State Building in New York City. And you may remember that right here. And of course, they just attributed this to an artist, so some kind of an art exhibit that was taking place. So this is a clear demonic manifestation of, once again, that energy that runs this world, that runs this beast system. We see this stuff before our very eyes. This story was about the Hosanna Church. It was at the heart of a child sex abuse scandal shrouded in reports of devil worship and rituals with cat blood. A splinter cult reportedly formed by leaders and members of the Hosanna Church became the salacious heart of a child sex abuse scandal that rocked and shocked the community following newspaper and broadcast reports of devil worshipping and occult rituals involving animal blood and pentagrams. Nick Pizzolatto, the South Louisiana-reared creator of HBO's critically acclaimed pulp thriller True Detective, told an Entertainment Weekly reporter that viewers of his show can piece together parts of the plot and forthcoming ending by Googling the words Satanism, preschool, in Louisiana. He then said, "You'll be surprised at what you get." Here's an example from South Africa. Participator turned state witness Lester Moody, who admitted to using drugs heavily, said the group decided Theolojo was Johannesburg's great prostitute during a game where one asks questions and burns tissue paper with matches to see the answer. It was decided that the whore of Babylon, that's right, the whore of Babylon, would be sacrificed. Drinking her blood, eating her flesh, and burning her with fire would be rewarded with power, wisdom, fame, and money, thought the youths. So again, we can see this lie being spread all around the world, that there's power. There's power in killing others. There's power in taking their blood. There's power in sexually abusing them. In May, a 14-year-old boy allegedly murdered 4 family members in Johannesburg's East Rand. Reportedly, he was fueled by drugs and Satanism. This guy said he is a Satanist. If he kills, he is sacrificing his family for the boss, told a neighbor. He said it came from his mind and told him to kill them because of the full moon. Those killings came after a 14-year-old was allegedly murdered in Johannesburg by Satanists who reportedly drank her blood. Once again, there is power in the blood. So here's a few things I want to share with you from this article, Satanism and Witchcraft, the Occult and the West Sacrifice. In Cults That Kill, Probing the Underworld of Occult Crime, award-winning investigative journalist Larry Kahaner chronicles interviews with police officials and occultists throughout the country showing that occult crimes, including drug peddling, child abduction, rape, pornography, sacrifice, and worse, are now practiced in places all across America. For example, Detective Pat Matoyer of the Los Angeles Police Department observes, "We think we discovered a correlation between Easter week and occult-related crime. From Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday is the week for killing babies. We watch for kidnappings and that sort of thing. The patients we're dealing with have told us that babies are killed during those days." One person said she has seen 6 babies killed during that time period. These groups don't always kidnap babies. Some have doctors within the group who will perform the birth and not fill out a birth certificate. Then, when they sacrifice the baby, they're not really killing anyone who existed. So before we say something like this, it has been verified with a minimum of 5 separate people who don't know each other, who have never spoken to each other. A minimum of 5 people. So here's a really important part, once again going along with what we're discussing here in this video. The attainment of power is common to witchcraft, Satanism, and magic, and here we again see the necessity for the abolition of time, history, and normal consciousness. Possession and sacrifice are key ingredients. For example, the witch's magic circle is a place where time disappears, where history is obliterated. Some covens use music, chanting, and dancing to raise psychic energy within the circle. The most common form of working is known as raising a cone of power. Many of the revivalist covens have rituals in which the goddess, symbolized by the moon, is drawn down into a priestess of the coven, who at times goes into trance and is possessed by or incarnates the goddess force. Similarly, there are rituals where God force is drawn down into the priest who takes the role of the god in the circle. In these rituals, witches become the gods. So jumping back to the magic circle, I want to just give you an example of how often we see this. Now, this right here is connected with CERN. This was a short film called Symmetry that was produced at CERN, and there's tons of occult imagery throughout this, and there's really no surprise, because many of us believe that CERN is literally trying to pierce the veil between here and the next realm, and in this case, the darker realms, or the pit, you might say. So they have the 2 people representing both sides of that equation, the dark and the light. They're in the magic circle. You see the as above, so below paradigm right here. And of course, underneath that, you have the Large Hadron Collider, which is the very instrument that many of us believe is being used to pierce the veil. So bouncing back to a connection to Kali, here we have Shiva, the statue of Shiva, which is in front of CERN. And these connections are not coincidences. Once again, these are all the occultists, the connections between the occultists that run this world from the very top of that pyramid. So now I want to show you some more connections to the occult world that's right before our very eyes. And of course, occult means hidden. This is all in plain sight. One thing you'll notice next time you watch one of these performances, like an awards show, a halftime show, whatever. Now, all these things have been infiltrated by the so-called Illuminati industry, or Illuminati entertainment industry. These are the satanic sellouts in Hollywood. And next time one of these shows come on, I want you to pay attention to how many times these people stand inside a magic circle, because that's exactly what this is. In practically every one of these awards shows, these ceremony shows, whatever, you're going to find the magic circle. This is just one example right here. And here's just another example of one of the magic circles. And again, we have the magic circle. You can even trace this to the Oscars. Once again, the magic circle, like I said, you will find this in practically every musical performance out there. Anything that's mainstream and being televised, you're going to find your magic circles. This is the Satanic Hollywood Illuminati system, after all. Here's another interesting article where human sacrifices are still taking place throughout the world. Drug gangs, witch doctors, and weird cults, the terrifying modern face of human sacrifice. This once again tells us there's nothing new under the sun. Everything works in cycles. And then we have this article here, 10 contemporary cases of human sacrifice. It says here, if we were to rank the cults and religions associated with most modern human sacrifices, Satanism would certainly be at the top of the list. Satanists are somewhat prone to getting lured by ritual killings. One such case is the murder of a 42-year-old California woman, Amelia Espinoza. The killer was her own son, an 18-year-old factory worker. It's speculated that he was distraught over his girlfriend's death in a car accident, and that may have led him to the gruesome murder. Others report that the teenager had a strained relationship with his mother, who did not approve of his dark musical tastes, among other things. The prosecutor, however, stated that the murder was motivated by sheer evil and this young man's firm satanic beliefs. It's the story of Lalita Tati. This young lady, 7 years old, was happily watching TV in her neighbor's home in a remote village. And these may have been the last minutes of her life, because soon after she was abducted. So a week later they found her, and at first the police thought that the poor girl had been raped and killed. Her father reported that he was arrested, and the police attempted to torture him into confessing that he murdered his own daughter. However, sometime later, 2 poor illiterate local farmers were arrested for the crime. It turned out that the little girl was sacrificed to ensure better harvest. Her throat was sliced, and her liver was cut out and offered to a goddess. The story of Elise Poller. In 1996, 8 months after her disappearance, the corpse of 15-year-old Elise Poller was found in Eucalyptus Grove, not far away from her home. She was half naked and placed under a pentagram. The officers were brought there by 16-year-old Royce Casey, one of Elise's murderers, and he first confessed to the murder to a priest and then to the police. Casey and his 2 accomplices, 14-year-old Joseph Fiorella and 16-year-old Jacob Dalashmut, had planned to kill Poller for months. The trio idolized Slayer, a popular band known for misogynistic lyrics with mention of satanic practices and human sacrifice. The boys believed that they needed to sacrifice a virgin to Satan, so the trio even thought that this would bring them glory. I want you to remember that. Again, a lot of these people think they're going to gain something from giving something to the devil, and that's a key component with a lot of these ritual sacrifices. I'm not going to go through each one of these cases, but I did want to share a few of them with you. I'll end with this case right here. This one's very interesting, and it ties into something we've been talking about already. Sumitra Bashan, a middle-aged woman from the remote Indian village of Barha, was a seemingly ordinary but unlucky lady. Sumitra's husband had left her a long time ago. She was heavily indebted, and her 2 grown-up sons, who were regarded as lazy sluggards, did nothing to ease their mother's life. Things did not get better. In fact, they got worse. The entire family began having nightmares and horrifying visions of Goddess Kali. The cause of this was obvious to Sumitra, a curse. She consulted a tantric, a traveling priest that came to the village from time to time to give the locals advice and medicine. He told Sumitra to slaughter a chicken at the entrance of her home and offer the corpse and the blood to the goddess, and the woman complied. Well, apparently that was not enough for Kali. The nightmares continued and soon got worse. Sumitra visited the tantric again. This time he came up with a more radical suggestion. He said another sacrifice was necessary. This one had to be a boy from Sumitra's village. Again, the lady did not question the proposed solution. One night, she and her sons sneaked into their neighbor's home and abducted 3-year-old Akash Singh. They brought the child to their home where the sacrifice ceremony was conducted. Sumitra and her sons recited a mantra, waved incense, and smeared various scented oils over the body of the frightened child. Then the men pulled out a knife, sliced the child's nose, ears, and hands, and laid him bleeding in front of the image of Kali. Some of you may have seen this story. If not, it's very important. It definitely applies to what we're talking about here. The Temple of Baal in New York is going up same day the blood sacrifice to the beast begins. April 19th is the first day of a 13-day period of time known as the blood sacrifice to the beast that culminates on the high occult holy day of Beltane on May 1st. In some parts of the world, Beltane is much better known as May Day, and it's been described as the Illuminati's second most sacred holiday. As you'll see below, we have indeed witnessed a disturbing series of blood sacrifices during the second half of April in recent years, and many people wonder if there's a connection. April 19th is also known as the Feast of Moloch. If you're not familiar with Moloch or Molech, it is an ancient Canaanite god that is repeatedly denounced in the Old Testament. Child sacrifice was a key feature of the worship of Moloch, and a giant statue of this pagan deity is set up at the Bohemian Grove in Northern California every year. Is it just a coincidence that reproductions of the arch that stood in front of the Temple of Baal in Palmyra, Syria, are going up in New York and London on the precise day when the Feast of Moloch is celebrated and when the blood sacrifice to the beast begins? The organization in charge of this cultural project, quote-unquote, is the Institute for Digital Archaeology. So is it just some weird accident that the date they decided on begins a 13-day period of time that is exceedingly significant for the worship of Baal? April 19th through May 1st, blood sacrifice to the beast, a most critical 13-day period. Fire sacrifice is required on April 19th. April 19th is the first day of the 13-day satanic ritual day relating to fire, the fire god Baal, or Molech, Nimrod, the sun god, also known as the Roman god Saturn, Satan the devil. This day is a major human sacrifice day demanding fire sacrifice with an emphasis on children. This day is one of the most important human sacrifice days, and as such, has had some very important historic events occur on this day. So here's a short list of some of these events that have happened on or around April 19th. April 19th, 1993, the Waco Massacre. April 19th, 1995, the Oklahoma City bombing. April 20th, 1999, Columbine High School Massacre. April 16th, 2007, the Virginia Tech Massacre. And April 16th, 2013, the Boston Marathon explosions. Here's another really good article, Abortion as Ritual, Satanic Child Sacrifice. This is from an interview with Zachary King titled Ex-Satanist Babies Ritually Aborted for Devil, Your Hands Have to Get Bloody. In the early 1980s, he was involved in a satanic coven, and at one point the coven's males were to have sex with a woman so as to get her pregnant to eventually perform a ritual abortion. Zachary was a teenager then and had to ask, what is an abortion? The reply for which was, we say a spell and there is a baby in its mother's womb and we kill it. As long as it's inside the woman, it's legal. I guess the emphasis was added on that part. Ritual abortions were great news to him, as if they kill someone inside a woman and that's legal, and then 5 minutes later it's illegal. This is awesome, he thought. I can do this all day long. You step through this door and you can kill. You step through this other door and you go to prison. That in itself should tell you how satanic this is. The coven leader called it a baby, not a lump of cells, and he said, you kill it. They didn't call it a lump of cells. Zachary King would come to oversee some 140 ritual abortions. He wore the same type of wizard's garb seen in a music video by female rocker Pink for her song Just Like a Pill. The video shows a wizard dressed in black, his face painted pale, and wearing a black top hat, reciting a spell behind the singer, as the scene then flips to simulated group sex. So as the veil lifts, we're beginning to see our enemies much more clearly. And here's a story some of you may have seen. If not, Satanists performed a shocking ceremony at Planned Parenthood during a pro-life protest. And this isn't the only story connecting Planned Parenthood with Satanists, or even witchcraft for that matter. So here's a story from Vice, kind of covering the same situation. Of course, this seems to be more pro-Satanist, and that's no big surprise coming from Vice. Devil's advocates, the Satanic temples fight to protect your abortion rights. Amidst rising violence and an onslaught of clinic closures, the Satanic Temple is fighting to protect women's right to safe and legal abortion. How great of them, right? Thanks, guys. So, of course, we have this story here as well. Satanists emerge as advocate as Planned Parenthood restores Missouri abortion services. And you remember this image right here. For the last few years, the Satanic Temple has created multiple Baphomet statues and are trying to place them in different places all across America. And they're only up in a few places right now, but of course this is part of their agenda. But what's most important to note, of course, is the children side by side there with this demonic representation. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. That's most of what I really wanted to show you. Once again, we're really living in an as above, so below paradigm. Everything has been twisted up. We're seeing a time where innocence, purity, this is under attack. Anything considered good is now seen as evil, on the other hand, and anything evil is now seen as good. This right here is a movie that ties everything in together we've been talking about. It's called The Witch. I don't know if you've seen this or not. I have, and it is by far the most satanic film I've ever seen in my entire life. What makes it so satanic is the message at the very end of the film. And this movie is all about showing you what happens when you make a deal with the devil, and all the great things that you can get out of it. It also shows how important blood sacrifice is. So if you're willing to kill somebody, if you're willing to sacrifice someone, specifically a child, there is child sacrifice in this as well. There's family sacrifice in this, killing your loved ones. If you're willing to go that far and sign a deal with the devil, he'll give you anything worldly that you could ever want, and more. And once again, this is the message of the movie. At the very end, the person that was involved in killing everybody for the witch, or letting them be killed by the witch, ends up getting everything they could ever want, even magical powers. So at the end of the film, this one person who's killed their entire family, who's let the witch kill their entire family, literally signs a deal with the devil, and at the very end is given magical powers to float around through the woods with other witches. And here's a gif from the very end of The Witch, but as you can see, get the one girl standing there. This is after everything's been done, entire family's been killed, signed a deal with the devil, which is actually represented by a goat. So you have the Baphomet in this film. At the very end, she goes through the woods naked, and here she finds other witches, all of them naked with magical powers, floating up in the sky. How evil is that, really? I mean, how evil is this film? This is the moral to this film. It's also the moral to everything we've been talking about. A lot of these people are drawn into this. It's a power play. They're willing to kill, they're willing to sacrifice, and they need the blood of the young, of the innocent. There's more power there. Because they don't have any power they feel themselves, they want to take it. These really are dark times we're living in, and once again we're seeing the veil being lifted constantly. We're seeing a real attack on purity and innocence, an attack on the children. But I'm grateful that it's all coming out. I'm grateful that people are beginning to see it for what it really is. We have to know our enemy before we can stop our enemy, and that's been a big part of my mission for a really long time, and there's others out there that do this type of work as well. And I believe I can speak for us all when I say I hope it's helping. So once again, thank you so much for checking out my video. And more importantly, take care out there, keep your eyes open, stay aware, share the truth, and I'll talk to you later.